President Trump launches a cryptic tweet on China, causing observers to scratch their heads. A special election in Georgia tonight may help determine the path of the House of Representatives in 2018 midterm elections. Find out more about these issues today here on Swamp Talk. I'm John Lieber. I'm the practice head for the United States here at the Eurasia Group. And today we're going to talk about U.S. politics and policy and take some of your questions. So please leave them right down here in the question box here on Facebook Live, and we'll try to answer them live on the air. So first feature on this week's Swamp Talk is to talk about President Trump's tweet of the week. This one was quite an easy one. No doubt what the tweet of the week was. This happened about 20 minutes ago. He said, "While I greatly appreciate the efforts of President Xi and China to help with North Korea, it has not worked out. At least I know China tried." So lots going on here. Honestly, I have no idea what this means. Your guess is as good as mine, and please feel free to throw any theories in the comments section here. I think he's talking about the death of the American student tourist traveling through North Korea, sent back in a coma to his parents in Ohio last week, sadly passed away within the last 24 hours or so. And I think what President Trump is saying that President Xi and China tried to help out in the situation. Ultimately, that failed because the North Koreans were only able to return the student in a very unfortunate state. However, this could really be about anything. This could be some kind of announcement about something that's yet to come with China. There's a high-level dialogue that begins tomorrow between the Chinese and the Americans, and this could be him setting up the ground for it. What I think is interesting about it is that he's going out of his way to kind of praise China for their efforts, even though ultimately, on whatever the issue is he's talking about, they didn't achieve a result. We know that President Trump considers himself having a decent relationship with President Xi. We know less about how President Xi thinks about that, perhaps one-sided relationship that President Trump has. But this is Trump kind of trying to set up and make sure the Chinese know that he still likes them. He's still their ally. So hopefully learn more about this tweet as time goes on here, and hopefully learn more later today. A couple of topics we want to cover. First was the Georgia special election, which is happening tonight. This is for the seat vacated by former Representative Tom Price, who's now the Secretary of Health and Human Services, longtime member of Congress in a seat formerly held by Newt Gingrich. That's been held by Republicans for 30 or so years, and they've won traditionally with very, very, very large margins, 20 or 30-point margins. Right now, because that seat has been vacated by Price, there's a special election happening tonight, and the Democrat, a 30-year-old first-time candidate for office named Jon Ossoff, is extremely competitive for this seat, a seat he probably should not be competitive for. So what does this mean for President Trump, for healthcare, for all of the agenda items? You know, President Trump only won this district by a percentage point and a half. So he did slightly worse here than he did nationally because he was beat by Hillary Clinton in the national popular vote by 2 points. So this is a district that is probably trending a little bit more Democratic over time. These suburban districts are going to be the key battlegrounds where the control for the House is fought for in the 2018 midterm elections. You know, if you look at the results of the 2016 presidential elections, the Democrats are really dominating in urban areas, and the Republicans are really dominating in rural areas, and the exurbs are trending slightly purple in favor of the Republicans, and the suburbs are trending slightly blue or purple in favor of the Democrats. So this kind of suburban district full of educated voters is going to become sort of the new swing district that's going to go back and forth over time between the Republicans and the Democrats. This seat has been very, very hard fought. $50 million, almost $60 million spent on a House seat is unheard of. This is the most expensive House election in U.S. electoral history because the Democrats really, really want to pick up this seat as a sign of momentum going into the 2018 midterm elections, which are still 16 months away. The Republicans want to hold on to the seat as a way of showing that, you know, Donald Trump may not be that popular, but that doesn't necessarily going to derail the Republican majority in the House and derail their legislative agenda. So, you know, what's going to happen tonight? Who knows? The polls are awfully close. Ossoff is, you know, within the polling margin of error and showing a fairly consistent lead, but it's a very small lead. Democrats are going to, and Republicans are really going to have to rely on turnout here. Whomever turns out the most voters is obviously going to win. And I think there's a real risk of over-interpreting this result. You don't need a loss or a win in a special election to suggest that a president with a 38% approval rating is a drag on his own party going into the midterm elections. There are a lot of structural advantages the Republicans enjoy in the House of Representatives. A lot of the districts are drawn in their favor. Democratic votes tend to be concentrated in dense urban areas, so a lot of them end up getting wasted in a way that doesn't help them pick up a majority, even though they may get a lot of the popular vote, the congressional popular vote, if there were one. So there's a lot of headwinds. There's a lot of things that are helping the Republicans structurally, and I think President Trump and his low popularity are a bit of a headwind. I don't need a special election in Georgia to tell me that. I don't think the results here will be spun, no matter who wins, to the party's advantage of the winner. But really, I don't think there's a lot of signal you can draw from one special election this far in advance of the midterms. I think the analog everyone's looking at is the Scott Brown election in 2010, when Democrats held 60 seats in the Senate in the first year of Obama's presidency. Senator Ted Kennedy died. A Republican, Scott Brown, unexpectedly won that seat, if only for a few short years, and that really changed some of the dynamics surrounding the Affordable Care Act. But the Affordable Care Act still got passed, the Dodd-Frank bill still got passed, and the loss of the 60-seat majority in the Senate did not derail President Obama's legislative agenda, and I think that's probably what you're going to see here as well. It's just one seat. The other big event that we were watching today was a speech given by Speaker Paul Ryan on his tax reform plan. It was billed as a major address by his team. Oftentimes, things that are billed as a major address turn out to be really quite disappointing. I think this was no different. The questions for tax reform right now are, can the Republicans deliver on a big tax bill despite the fact that the president isn't really that helpful in the legislative process and is kind of, in some ways, hurting the Republicans by failing to coordinate them and rally them around a political and policy strategy. So Ryan's speech today, what I wanted to see was, does he back off of his promise or his attempt to make the bill fully revenue neutral, meaning that for every dollar of tax cuts, you've got a dollar of tax increases that offset it? Very politically unpopular. Everyone likes the tax cuts. Nobody really likes the tax increases, and I think that's going to be really hard for them to pull off. So revenue neutral bill, in my opinion, is probably too difficult, too heavy of a lift, and I don't think they could achieve that. But there is room for a deficit increasing tax reform, but Paul Ryan has to back off of his stance to insist on it being revenue neutral. No real signals given of that today. He did say that he wanted the bill to be permanent, which is because of the way the Senate rules are set up for the tax bill. A permanent bill is a code for a fully offset bill. So not a really great signal there. But, I think there's still room to maneuver. The reality is the Republicans have until probably August of next year to really pass a bill. So you've got more than a year of legislating ahead of you. Ryan wants to get something done in 2017. I think that's a bit ambitious. Probably about a 15% chance that something gets done in 2017. Much more likely you see action next year, closer to the midterm elections, on a tax bill. The other thing about Ryan's speech today was that he didn't mention a border adjustable tax. Very unpopular notion. Probably a sign that he recognizes that the writing is on the wall, that a border adjustable tax isn't going to happen, isn't going to pass the House or the Senate, and he didn't bring it up in his speech. Okay, now to take some questions that are coming, we collected before the broadcast began, and please feel free to ask your questions down in the comments. Will the Senate vote on a healthcare reform before the July recess? I think the answer is yes. The July recess begins next Friday, and all signs are that they are headed towards a vote next Thursday. They have the legislative text drafted. Members are expecting to receive it on Thursday. No one has seen it yet, but that will change. On Thursday, they will have a week to review it before the vote, and the CBO score could come out as soon as Tuesday. I think the CBO score is really the hang-up here. CBO can take some time to score legislation, and depending on when they kind of see a final version of the bill, they can't really do a final score until they know how all the pieces interact with one another. So, the Republicans in the Senate are expressing some confidence and some optimism that the ball will be rolling by middle of next week, and a vote will happen on Thursday. So I think a vote's probably going to happen. So we have a question from a viewer, Jonathan Farmer. Is there a libertarian in the running in the Georgia election? No, There is no libertarian in the running. There may be a libertarian in the running. If there is, I don't know who he is. He's not really registering. I'm pretty sure it's just a Republican and a Democrat, both of whom are polling at about 49%. So very, very close between the two of them right now. So I don't think there's a spoiler out there, but I haven't heard of one at least. Next question we have here is, how unorthodox is the closed-door negotiation? Or is this just part of making deals happen in Congress? I don't think this is the first time we've seen bills drafted, behind closed doors. Every bill is drafted behind closed doors. Even the original Obamacare bill, which, the Democrats are saying there were hundreds of hearings and all these amendments from Republicans, et cetera, et cetera. The final bill was drafted behind closed doors in then Majority Leader Reid's office, and then rolled out to members, kind of the final product rolled out to members late in the process. If you look at the Russia sanctions bill that the Senate overwhelmingly passed last week, 98-2, that bill was drafted by the Banking Committee largely with input from the Foreign Relations Committee. There had been some daylight on the Foreign Relations Committee bill, but really no one had seen the Banking Committee bill that it was then married up with. So I don't think it's that unusual. This process is happening more and more these days as Congress has become less functional, passing bills has become harder, and the partisan rancor has gone up. I think the problem the Republicans face right now is they made a lot of colorful quotes during the original Obamacare process about how untransparent it all was. And now that they're in power, well, looks like that actually is a pretty good way to pass a bill that you want to pass. So a little bit unusual. Next question is, will Jared Kushner bring peace to the Middle East? Good question. Long time effort by the United States to do this. Some very kind of respected, powerful negotiators have tried this in the past, and the U.S. has intervened on many occasions in the Middle East without success. Jared Kushner, young guy, first experience in government, inherited a fortune from his family, inherited business from his family. I'm personally skeptical that he will be the one to bring peace to the Middle East. If he does bring peace to the Middle East, well, the rest of the policy professionals that are here in the swamp should really just kind of consider new careers, because if a newcomer to government with no experience brokering peace could accomplish something that generations of experienced negotiators have failed to do, I think we all need to really rethink what we're doing here and maybe go farm or pick up some other profession. So that is all the times that we have this week for Swamp Talk. Please join us again next week. We'll be back to talk about the healthcare bill and anything else that's kind of all the rapidly changing scene here in Washington, D.C. Thanks so much.